Peter Stano is with us tonight, spokesperson of the EU on foreign policy issues. Peter, hello.
Hello, good afternoon from Brussels.
Good afternoon. Could the Hamas attack on Israel change the world? That straightforward question to you.
Well, we hope not, but we are already seeing that a lot is changing on the ground. What changed absolutely is the unprecedented nature of the confrontation between Israel and Palestinians. This time it was unprecedented, brutal terrorist attack against mostly Israeli civilians. So this is a game changer, and we see the game changer also in the extent of the Israeli response to this.
What lesson to learn for the world? What lesson should the world learn out of that?
Well, unsolved conflicts only feed the cycle of violence. So this is what we are saying. I mean, after this latest escalation and confrontation will be over, because at one point it needs to be over. It will not be over unless there is a solution to the overall problem. And the overall problem is the situation of the Palestinians in general and the unsolved issue of the occupation.
What do we do as a world community, what we call ourselves civilized West? How are we to prevent this in the future? What do we do? Build fence, educate Palestine? What do we do?
Well, first of all, the solution needs to be found by those who are party to this conflict. Of course, it cannot be Hamas, because there is no place for people like Hamas. These are terrorists. So with them, any solution is not thinkable. Any negotiations are not possible. But the Israelis and Palestinians in general, they were engaged in the past in peace talks, and the only way out of this vicious and eternal cycle of violence are talks and dialogue.
A terrorist group from one of the world's poorest places and enclaves pulls all of a sudden such a devastating attack. Do you think someone is standing behind the curtain?
Well, this is something that needs to be clarified first of all by the Israelis to shed some light on what happened, how it happened, how come Israel was not able to prevent it. But obviously, the Gaza Strip is a very isolated piece of land. It's a very controlled piece of land in terms of like there are satellites, there are drones, there is, I mean, a lot of surveillance around it. So it's obvious that with all the limitations for imports into Gaza, and the limitations on basically everything, it's impossible that Hamas was the only one who was preparing and executing this operation.
Well, then my other question, if this is so, the area is so controlled, the Israeli civilians, by the Israeli civilians, how it is possible that they've lost the contact of somebody delivering thousands and thousands of missiles in the, somebody turned a blind eye or something in the inside of the Tzahal, inside of the Israeli Defense Forces, inside of the special security forces.
These are all the questions that the Israelis need to answer themselves, for themselves actually, because in the end what is at stake is the safety and security of the state of Israel and its citizens. What is important for us is that we don't have to deal with the very damaging consequences, in the sense of like all the hostages that have been taken, they need to be released. The aggression which still continues from the side of Hamas, meaning firing rockets, they still continue. That needs to stop. And of course, we also don't want to see the suffering of the innocent civilian population in Gaza. So this is what the attention of the international community should be focused on right now.
I want to discuss something from Reuters. Hamas has given Israel the impression that it is not ready to fight. A source close to Hamas told Reuters, describing the plans for the most dramatic attack since the Yom Kippur War like 50 years ago. It is not my intention to question the activities and competence of Israeli intelligence, but could this attack have been prevented again, and should it be prevented? Or that was the plan?
Well, these are very good questions and, very relevant questions. But again, these are the questions the Israelis need to address themselves, because in the end, they were the target, they are the victim, and they need to make sure that nothing similar will be happening in the future, because it was a terrible tragedy for all those involved. It was a terrible tragedy how these people have been massacred in Israel. And for us, as international community, it's really important to make sure that we contribute to the relaunch of the peace talks.
Do you believe, as a person, that the reason for Hamas to attack was just maybe a lot simpler, not to change the order of things in the Middle East, but to take as much hostages as possible?
Without speculating on the motives, because it's only Hamas who know the motives. But for us, it's important that we don't see these tragedies being repeated. On one hand, the terrorists, they need to pay for what they did. No doubt. There cannot be impunity. There needs to be accountability. And again, what is important is not to create the situations where such attacks are happening. What Hamas did and what Hamas keeps doing since Saturday is actually harming the cause of the Palestinian people. It's harming the Palestinian people physically. So this is not the way out, and this is not the answer. For us, it was always about the solutions that need to be found, first of all, by the main actors, Israelis and Palestinians, and in dialogue, not in confrontation.
What if
we,
Israel...
as the European Union...
Pardon me, but what Israel is most likely to find the solution by destroying Hamas to the ground, turning Gaza into the, if not ground zero, then almost that. And that will be the solution for the just peace for another, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. And then something like that again happens. Because this is, if you look back over the shoulder, this is what is happening all of the time.
Well, when we are talking about the renewal of peace talks and peace negotiations, we are not talking about Hamas. Hamas is not partner for peace.
Okay.
We cannot identify Hamas with the Palestinian people and vice versa. There is Hamas, the terrorist organization, and there are Palestinian people and Palestinian Authority.
Right.
These are the partners for peace and for negotiations.
What do you think benefit can be for Russia to get from this escalation?
Well, Russia is benefiting already because the attention of the world is shifting away. First of all, the attention of the media. But of course, the crisis between Israel and Hamas, the crisis in Nagorno-Karabakh, this will not distract us, the Europeans, from the crimes committed by Russia in Ukraine. So we keep watching what is going on also in Ukraine. And we keep continuing Ukraine. This is without question. For us, this is a top priority, because it is also in our vital interest. What's going on in Ukraine is in our immediate neighborhood,
right,
and has grave impact worldwide. What is happening in Gaza and between Hamas and Israel is tragic, but so far it's limited to the region. So, of course, the Ukrainian issue is much more important and much more serious when seen from the global perspective.
Oh, I can clearly see why. What do you think? Do you, as a politician and as a professional and as a person, do you believe that Russian-Israeli relations can be, what can they be after Israel will inevitably defeat Hamas? Will they even talk to the Kremlin? Because he was obviously supporting Hamas and openly supporting Hamas.
This is not for us to say. For us as the European Union, it is important to ensure that Israel is exercising its right to self-defense, okay, that the rights of the Palestinian people are respected, that eventually we get to the two-state solution, and how our partners arrange their relations with third parties, okay, it's fully up to them.
Do you believe that peace talks are possible between two worlds, Arab and Jewish world?
Absolutely. That's the only way out. There is no alternative. And at one point, this will need to happen. Otherwise, we will only see the repetition of these confrontations and of this violence.
Okay. It was Peter Stano with us. Thank you so very much, Peter, for what you just told us and for your time and for your explanations. I hope when your voice is back to you, we can continue then.